Don't spare the horses, it's Uncle says. Hello and welcome to Uncle Says, a weekly podcast discussion of making short videos for YouTube while living in China. I am your host Emily, and with me is Peter. And we are coming to you live to tape from the beautiful whoopwu studios in Luzhou, Sichuan, China. It's been a holiday here for Labor Day, May 1st Labor Day, and today we're going to talk a lot about recharging your creative batteries. So stick around for that discussion. But first, let's check in with how's your uncle? So it's Labor Day here, and much of the world celebrates Labor Day on May 1st. We don't in America, but other places are different from America.
What?
Yeah. And so we've been on holiday, a couple days holiday. I actually had to work today because the Chinese have a system of moving around your weekend days to make your vacation feel longer. So this morning I did have to go to school and pretend it was Friday. But that's not so bad. And then my schedule, my Friday afternoons are free, so I'm here to speak with you. But we had a really nice time off. A friend had a birthday, so we went out to his birthday party celebration, and we just went out and walked by the river. We just got out of the house a lot. It was Luzhou nice weather, so it was not raining but gray. Blue sky days are pretty rare, so
are you writing a song?
We take what we can get. Yeah, maybe. Blue sky days are pretty rare. But it was a good vacation. I thought. Peter, you're always on vacation.
Yes, and it's always wonderful. Slightly gray, but nice.
Yeah. So this morning I did go to school, and I had a student splashed me with his tears. It was so, 𝗖𝗵cie, so just adorably pathetic. He was sad because, so different ages handle this better. The younger kids, when I do a volunteer situation, I do choose everybody who wants to go gets to have a chance to do whatever thing we're doing. And then older kids, there's not enough time, especially Chinese classes, even in kindergarten, the 6-year-olds are almost 40 kids in the class, so we just don't have time for everybody to go. And this was a kid in the middle class, maybe there are 4 I think. And he just was very upset that I wasn't choosing him. And then his teacher was telling him, because I come into the classroom as an elective, and they have their all-day teachers are with them as well, helping out. And so he was crying because I wasn't choosing him, and she's like, but just raise your hand and sit nicely. She's choosing the kids who sit nicely. So then finally I look at him and I'm like, raise your hand. And so he did, and then I chose him, and he was just still okay. And then when he came up to do his thing, he blinked and his tears splashed on me, which is the first time I think anybody else's tears have been on me. It was weird. I've had no one's vomited on me, so that's I'm blessed in this life. But yeah, I was not expecting tears, but it happened. With a happy ending.
Happy tears?
Happy tears for that kid. But yeah, so that's how it's been. Anything else, Peter?
No tears.
No
that's
tears.
Good.
Yeah, no tears at home. That's very nice. Let's go on then to conducting business. Our business this week, we have kind of two significant things. Number one, last week I said we were not on iTunes as a podcast, but we are, in fact, on iTunes, and I'll include the link below. You can always watch us here. You're here on YouTube, or maybe you're here on Stitcher, or maybe you're here on SoundCloud, and now you could be here on iTunes. I will link to all the ways you can find us, and you can use your preferred method to listen to us every week on your preferred device. So That now includes iTunes, which is exciting.
Move over, Mark Maron.
Yeah, we're coming for you. And the other significant piece of business this week is we've had 3 videos recently.
3 in the past week, yeah.
Hit over 200 fairly quickly in a couple days. 200 views.
Not 3 in general, but our last 3
Yeah, our last
videos
3 have gone over 200, more than 200 views within a couple of days, which is a new rate of change for us. We had been at, like, maybe we hit about 100 in a day.
Yeah, on our primary release. Some of our old ones, we didn't really do the really big promotion or anything, so they might be like 30 to 60 or so like that. But that's because we didn't try to push it out to anywhere. But mostly they were hitting hopefully around 100 after about a week.
Yeah.
And these 3 guys, all 3 hit 2 within a couple of days, really.
Yeah, that's very exciting. And kind of in conjunction with that, overnight so last week we were over 100 subscribers, and then overnight today we got 7 new subscribers.
Yeah, I think so.
Which the pessimist in me immediately is like, they're bots!
They're all bots!
But, yeah, this is, to clarify, this is on Hello Foreigner, our China vlog, where we publish our short video work. So if you are subscribed to us here and do not follow our vlog, here is what we here is where we discuss the videos we make over on Hello Foreigner. So check that out.
Which actually is something kind of exciting, because here, Hello Uncle Foreigner is our original channel that we chopped up and dispersed into 3 channels. So that took us a year plus for us here at Uncle Foreigner to get to 113 subscribers.
Right.
And as of today, we hit 114 on our brand new 4-month-old channel. We've surpassed ourselves, is what we're saying here.
Yeah, it's a good day.
It's nice. And 100 may not be a whole heck of a lot to some people, but we got 2 channels at 100 and 1 almost at 20. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and the 3rd channel we run is called westerntoilet, which is it's music videos with original music by Peter.
The music from our videos.
Yeah.
From the
So they're all all 3 channels are interrelated, if you are unfamiliar with our work.
Visit them all.
Visit them all.
It's a friendly place.
Yeah, we're friendly. Let's go on to Homeschool Film School. Our topic this week is kind of recharging your creative batteries. There's a well-known, I don't know, I knew it, but there's a kind of a cycle to creativity where you're in production mode, you're making a lot of stuff, then you finish that project, and then you kind of, you're not producing work, but you're going out in the world and like being interested in things and getting inspired, and then something specific inspires you and you get back into a specific project. Which
usually in music or probably in writing too, you write your first book, your first album, and you tell the whole world about how it felt growing up, and we all identify with that. And then you write your second album where you go out on the road and everyone says it's a slump.
Which is kind of an example of how that doesn't work out so well, because no one actually cares what it's like to be
a success,
a touring musician. No, I think people are invested in your success, but they don't want to hear about that steel horse that you ride. So yeah, and for us it's a little bit challenging because we are on a weekly cycle of creating videos, but I would say for me personally, my creative and recharge period is not weekly. I would say like I have a couple weeks of like producing a lot of ideas, and then a couple of weeks where I step back and I'm kind of more absorbing interesting things and processing them. But we've kind of just developed a method of working that supports that, and that we can still put out a video every day. Every day, not every day. Every
sometimes
week. In that, I think
we could.
We cannot. We cannot put out a video every day, because part of what looks like an even level of creating all the time is like some weeks we're super busy and doing filming so many things and writing so many things, and then we write enough material that can kind of last us, especially this past couple weeks. We kind of had like 2 weeks of like intense activity, and then now Peter is still editing that, but I'm kind of like gathering ideas again. So even though we're putting out videos, I have time to kind of sit back and not.
Which really works well. Like, again, we've talked about it. If it's just one person working on, let's say, a YouTube channel or whatever your endeavor is, it's not very enviable, at least to my point of view. It's great to be able to like be your own boss and have no one artistically to stand in your way of, I'm writing a rock opera or whatever that gets overblown. But that benefit of being able to, I'm working over here, I'm doing all the stuff while you come up with new ideas, and then it switches again, and you take all your stuff and put that onto film, and then meanwhile I'm cleaning up the stuff that was done last week, you're building up new stuff for next week, so as partnership kind of thing.
Yeah, so we both
beneficial.
can, it's not coasting because the recharge part is important, but like we can each take a turn to be less outwardly productive while the other is still like continuing to move us forward, which works out pretty well.
I think it's what keeps us on a weekly basis fairly comfortable. There's not.
Yeah, I don't think I could do weekly if I was just working by myself.
Right, and there's not like some kind of fallow area where we just have what are we going to do for ideas. There's never an empty space. We're usually going like, well, we can't fit all these ideas into 1 week, so that's a huge benefit.
Yeah, we have so many ideas.
Our heads are filled.
But part of that is, it was nice this vacation to get out and see people and go out. I actually met some potential new friends while we were just like walking around. So like part of that is like it's great to be in the studio all day. It's great to be writing, head down with the computer, but it's also very important to like unshackle your brain from whatever your media is and get out and actually talk to people.
Well, the one big benefit that we've had from the past year or so, while I've been recuperating, and you've been finding your legs for a new job, that we've been in the house for the better part of for 2018, just kind of pumping out ideas, coming up with the workflow of the whiteboard behind you, all these different processes to which we can easily slot in our ideas. And now the weather's nice again, winter's over, and we're finally ready to get back out there and rejuvenate all the ideas that we've been building up and preparing for a long time.
Yeah, because I mean, especially since the vlog is pretty personal. It's not a one-to-one map on our life, but it is like the ideas come from our life very...
As much as we try
very
to fight
specifically.
the word vlog,
yeah,
it is essentially a vlog.
It is a vlog, and so we need to like live a life that we can then vlog about, which both Peter and I are somewhat homebody inclined, so we do have to make that push of like, nope, you like your friends, go see them.
Yeah.
And
if we're going to be successful in making art that is interesting, we should probably be interesting ourselves.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that gets to what you were saying about the second album being about being on tour. Like, nobody wants to hear videos or watch videos about, like, what it's like to be in our studio making stuff. If we start making actual fiction pieces about what it's like to make a vlog, then, like, we are out of ideas.
Yeah. Those are Prince's least successful albums.
Yeah. But yeah, so go outside, go talk to people, go talk to people you don't like. That can be actually very inspirational.
Yeah. Everybody is fodder for our gristmill.
that is kind of a worry. I mean, we've mentioned a couple times we're writing a bigger project that I really hope that people. It is, it's inspired by what's happened around us, but I hope people don't look at it and be like, "Hey, is that me?" Like, no, it's not. But it might be.
Even if it's flattering?
Even if it's, I think people don't like to see fictionalized representations of themselves because...
It's weird.
Yeah, it's, I think, in general, someone else's view of who you are is probably very different from your own view of who you are, and that can be jarring, even if it is complimentary. That's just my guess.
Yeah. Yeah, so don't sign us up for a roast.
Yeah, don't tell me what you think I'm like. I don't care. I don't care to know. But yeah, so that's take a break every once in a while from producing.
Smell the flowers?
Yeah. And it's important to say, this is one last point of how do you tell recharge from procrastination? And that's I don't actually know. I only know in retrospect, like, I wasn't starting on something because it wasn't ready versus like I wasn't starting on something. I guess it's fear maybe is a way to tell. Are you scared to get started, or you just don't have anything to say?
It's I think probably a mixture of a bunch of those things. When you have part of our situation of moving here and giving us the time away from jobs that are, when your professional job is doing graphic design or writing, then that's what you do as a day job. So you get home and you're like, well, am I going to write some more? Maybe not so much. Also, what do I have to say? I just wrote, what am I going to write, a story about being a graphic designer at a newspaper? Like,
right.
How interesting is that? And then, yeah, you put in these other factors of like, well, I'm just tired, or do I not have anything to say, or is my paint box all askew and I don't know where all my tools are? Like what we were just saying about the last year has been really good, and we figured out how do we make our house different rooms that are different studios. Where do we film outside? Where do we film inside? Where does the equipment go? Where, once we have the raw materials, what folders do we put them in so that they can correspond with our program so data doesn't get lost? Like, all those things make it really hard to keep going as any kind of like, process. If you have to restart that every time, it's really daunting.
Oh yeah, I think you do need those structures in place. And it can be frustrating if you're like, I wish I was doing something, but instead I'm rearranging my living room to set something up.
Could be
but I think like a lot of our setup of the past year has been, how do we make the process of making stuff as frictionless as possible? And that's super important, because then it is like, it can be procrastination to reorganize the living room, or it can be totally necessary to reorganize the living room. Or if the living room's ready to go, your cameras are set up, the lights are nearby, then you don't have that excuse to not do it.
Yeah, I would say, look at any famous painter that has the money to put it together to have some kind of assistant or intern or something like that. Mm-hmm. Rarely or the ideal situation for most artists is to have somebody have all the paints ready for their palette, to have all their brushes clean, to have the station wiped down and ready to go, so that when you're ready to walk in and hit the your canvases are stretched. Everything is just ready for you to walk into the studio and go, I must create now. even like guitarists, like you have a guitar in every room, because you don't know when the inspiration is going to hit, so you just got to be ready to go.
Yeah. That's interesting. I guess that speaks to a different... If you could be working at any time, the material needs to be ready, because there is kind of stereotypically of writers the idea of the ritual that gets you ready for writing for the day, and whether that's like sharpening your pencils if you write by hand, which I don't know anybody who does that anymore, but there's probably someone. or like putting your typewriter in the right place, which that is, I think, like, it's maybe a little hipster, but there is like a thing about like having the right typewriter, having the right materials, and just like creating. It shouldn't be a long ritual, because then again, that's your procrastination. But there is like a ritual to, you know, I made my tea, I sit down at my desk, I'm ready to go.
I think there is, probably everyone has that. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of artists in all different kind of mediums that really want that 5 minutes, but then sometimes it really gets lost in your gear. Guitarists are the worst at it, because if you have all your amplifiers and your guitar pedals and maybe some recording equipment or something, you sit down and you're like, you've got like 5 to 20 guitars or something, and you're like, which guitar do I want to use? And then you're, which amp do I want to use? And then what kind of sound do I want to get out of it? And before you know it, you're like switching dials, and then you're like, well, maybe but that sound that I always wanted to get, let me go look it up online and find out how to get that. And now you're like surfing guitar channels.
Yeah, it's just choice overwhelmed. So I think, from a day-to-day perspective, like set your life up so it's as frictionless as possible to get to work. In terms of that kind of procrastinating, getting started. But I'm kind of talking more about long-term procrastination. Like, there's been a couple periods this year where it's been like a couple days or weeks where I'm like, but I don't want to. And in retrospect, I've been able to see, what validates that as a period of recharge versus just not working is that after that I've been incredibly productive. So maybe in the moment it is hard to tell of just like, I don't want to. But I think it is also knowing that about myself. I can give myself a break on those days where it's not coming today. I could push it and write something that I don't care about, or I could just go out. I could go out and like get interested in stuff.
Right. Well, being that you, as a writer for yourself, and as a professional writer that has to churn out words every day at a newspaper, so you know that like sometimes you just have to write because you have to write, and other times, well, finding that weird balance in between of like how much am I refueling, or how much is not even just procrastination, but like actually like hitting some kind of writer's block.
That's a really good question. Because I remember like when I worked for the newspaper, people asking about writer's block, and it's just like, you don't have time to have writer's block. And it is like, the discipline is there. You can create that discipline of like, I have to write something, I have to get to work, and I'm gonna do it. And I think, the popular imagination of writers is just like, Hemingway has done so much to damage the reputation of being a writer, of just like sitting around in a bar and being like, well, hold on, masterpiece. But yeah, if you can create the discipline where you can get the work done if you need to get the work done. But I would say it's maybe akin to being a graphic designer versus an artist. Like there's inspiration and creativity in graphic design, but it is also commercial work that you're doing at someone else's behest. And so you know how to sit down and get that done, even if you're not feeling particularly inspired. And so writing copy for somebody else is like, you've given me the parameters, I've interviewed the people, I've done the research, I really just have to like put this in order. And if my heart's not in it, maybe it won't be as good as it could be, but it'll be good enough because I've developed that discipline and I have these skills to do this work. Whereas if for the work that you and I are doing, I don't have an editor assigning me anything, and I don't have, I'm basically assigning myself. And it is like on days where there's been a couple projects where like maybe they weren't fully baked, or, I didn't have the research done on what they needed to be. And I could sit down, and I did sit down and write out a full script of a specific idea, and then, it was finished, and we never filmed it because it just, something about it wasn't clicking for us. And so that kind of experience of, writing the thing that, really in my heart or wherever creativity comes from, if I'm feeling that resistance, I guess that's the experience. I know I could push it and then we won't like it. Or I could take a break and go outside and do things to stimulate and inspire me, and then come back and do work that we're really excited about. And so I guess my answer for the question, is it procrastination or recharge? How can you tell the difference? Is really just experience. And hindsight, because did you take a week off and then the next 3 weeks you were insanely productive? That was a recharge.
Well, definitely when you are, when you have a work for hire situation, it's much easier to walk away from something that you've been given assignment. Maybe you're half-hearted about it, but you put everything you got into it. It's due for, let's say, Friday. It's Tuesday. You put a bunch of work into it. You hand it into your editor, and they're just like, "This isn't working out. Okay, did you try calling this person? Did you try it from this angle?" And you're like, "Yeah, I did. Let me try one more thing." And then at the end, if it doesn't work out, there's another story waiting behind you to fill it in, and you can kind of walk away and be like, well, I didn't really care if that got published or not, because I really didn't care about the story. It was just an assignment. Whereas with this situation, you could just kind of walk away because I just get bored out of it. You're a child playing with toys, and when I'm done with that toy, it's whatever, and you move on to something that's more exciting, and you kind of forget about it.
Right. Well, that's the benefit of no one has commissioned this work, so it really is. It's up to us. Do we want to do this? Then let's do this. If either of us are feeling resistance or that an idea isn't working, we don't have to pursue it. And that's hard. It's hard to abandon an idea that's not working, but sometimes I think
we can parlay this later into one of our videos.
But I think sometimes when it's not working, it's not time yet. There have been ideas that years later have come back around and it wasn't the time for that then because I needed this whole extra stuff. That's happened to me in the intervening years, and it can sound. I think artists are very superstitious because of this, because it just sounds like, ooh.
Yeah, when was the magic that touched you?
Yeah, or talking about having a muse, or that you are not in control. Whereas, if you're an accountant, you can be in control of accounting.
Well, a part of artistry is a certain amount of letting things flow freely. But if you let that go, you end up losing a lot of stuff. Just can float through your fingers, and you can forget ideas, and that's why artists keep sketchbooks and notebooks and things to be well, I don't want to lose that, but I'm not ready for it now. So I don't know how many notebooks you have by the bed, but
yeah, and I think I don't subscribe to that wooery that Elizabeth Gilbert has a really great book about writing and being creative. I forget what it's called, but it's really good. She's the author of Eat, Pray, Love, and other works. She's a very good writer. And she explains her theory, which I think is kind of tongue-in-cheek, that ideas themselves do exist separate from us out in the world, and they come to you, and it's a collaboration between you and the idea to get it out into the world. But that the idea very much is a separate entity, which I like the idea of. And in a metaphorical way, I guess I don't have a better way of describing how that works. That sometimes you're forcing an idea, or sometimes you ignored an idea so it leaves. So yeah, I don't think it's woo, but I think it is. Well, I think it's what I think is it is related to how human psychology, we have the illusion like where there's maybe a little homunculus in the driver's seat in our brain making all these decisions, but we're actually like a collection of perceptions and unconscious thoughts that surface. So I think where accounting has its own separate rules, so you can be accounting or not accounting, whereas like art making is more about like representing life, and life is kind of messy that way.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Well, and I think just being professional enough to know if you know how to take something in a different direction, or just to leave it sit. Both of those are professional stances to get the best work.
Yeah. And so it's important to take that time to not be working,
Yes.
and recharge. And on that note, let's move on to commentary. So we have a bunch of videos to talk about this week, some new, some old. We're going to start with some older videos. The first one being the end of summer.
The end of summer in Sichuan,
Yeah, which ended up being the third in a 3-part trilogy about summer last year. And it's a good example of patterns emerging after the fact. And it was a fun video to work on. It was a series of... we were well into, like, I would just take my phone out, and as inspiration struck, I would, like, turn it on, give myself a little selfie view, and just tell a little anecdote that had just occurred to me. Like, I just got a haircut, and then so I went outside and talked about the experience of that haircut. One of the other stories is about baby hair, how it can be, like, some babies just have such luscious hair, and they're babies, so it looks a little incongruous. And I like that one because it's not quite animation, it's more of like a moving illustration.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause it's hard. The challenge of vlogging, and the challenge of documentary too, is that it's sometimes hard to catch these moments that we see all the time, but if you're trying to catch them on film, it's very hard, especially babies. It's like, I've got to...
They're so fast.
They're so fast. But like, I had this idea, we want to put this video out next week. I have 1 week to catch a baby on film that has gorgeous hair. But part of why that's special is because it's rare. Like, babies often just have baby hair. And so I didn't catch a baby that had that kind of hair that I was talking about. So Peter was like, we do need some visual representation of this. And so he just drew it.
Yeah, without getting too far back into YouTube proprietary issues, I mean, that's part of what the big problem is that where do you find this material, and where most people get in trouble is because they steal it from somewhere else. But like, you do need something to illustrate what. I mean, it's a video medium. If it was a podcast, then I can rely completely on your words. But since we're watching a video, just watching your face telling me about a baby's hair is sort of like, why do I bother even looking at this? Yeah,
you're telling me about something that sounds really great to look at, but then not showing it to me. So I think it worked out, you know. Everyone should be part of a collaboration where one of you can draw.
Drawing helps, graphic design helps, when a camera fails.
Yeah. So that was... Oh, and then we opened it with... here in China, M&M's introduced a Sichuan peppercorn flavored M&M, which I asked later in the United States, if you've seen it and I'm wrong, that's okay. Tell me in the comments, I guess. But that this was a China-only flavor.
And not just spicy.
Yeah, it's not
Not
hot, not just hot pepper, because
That's Mexican. It's in a lot of
it's
places.
a very specific Sichuan spice.
The pringly tickle of the
pepper.
So face numbing. Face numbing chocolate.
Yeah, I saw it at the grocery store and I was like, we've got to try these. And it was Snickers too has a Sichuan flavor. I guess those are probably the same company, M&M's and Snickers. But anyway, it was something that was fun to try, but it was definitely, and it was like, I think when you get those combinations of spicy and sweet or sweet and sour, or those oppositions, or like sugar and salt, they do give you a taste sensation that you are like, I'll have more of that. And so we ate the whole M&Ms, but like I would never buy that again. It wasn't actually tasty. It was more just like, this is so weird. So we wanted to share that with you in a
Hello Foreigner kind of way.
Yeah, I guess, and that is where, like, I could have just told you that as the vlog story, but we decided instead to try this little music piece.
I think that's one of the things that we found is it's difficult as artists, is we don't want to just blatantly tell you information. That's not what we're here for. We're not here to hold hands and say, here's a treat and here's what it's like. It's more of like an interpretation, and how does that translate? It's probably like, oh, well, I just watched a weird video, but for us, it's the equivalent of us just telling you like that it's a Snickers bar, but it's tingly in a weird, spicy way.
Yeah, we're not a candy vlog. We don't need to get into. And so we did sing. I sang the little piece of music, which I don't know the name of what that's called.
Isn't it fanfare for the common man?
Is that fanfare for the common man?
I thought so.
It might be. So I sang the notes to that, and Peter mixed it all together to create that
fanfare.
That fanfare. And again, it is you have making your own supplementary materials instead of like downloading someone. It wouldn't have been to use someone else's recording of that piece of music would have not been our work, and it also like the joke. It was not part of what we were doing.
Yeah, and also I mean it's a good example of, I think that was one of the first things that we started to use your voice.
Yeah.
Incorporated into music.
Yeah.
And I mean I have a general rule of like, I don't want to Weird Al any kind of music. Not that I'm not a fan of Weird Al, but
we already have Weird Al.
Yeah, we don't need Weird Pete. But the just doing a parody of music is not fun for me as a musician, as a composer. But if you do something yourself to make it your own kind of satire or tribute to it or something like that, then that at least makes it an interesting process for us. That in particular was like, let's start working on vocals, because that's a whole other problem of like, where do we set up? Do we set up a room that we can keep the sound so it doesn't echo in right ways? Like, how can I bring that into the computer? Do we go straight into the computer? What kind of microphones do we? So now there's a whole nother interesting problem to go through, rather than just doink somebody else's music and be like, it's fanfare for the common man. Like, I'm sure that must be free license, or what do we call it?
Fair use.
Fair use of somewhere. Like, but
I don't
but
know
for
if
us,
it's old enough actually.
Oh, maybe not. But rather, making it ourselves actually makes it something interesting to put together, rather than just being like, that's not even that funny of a joke. Like,
it's not really a joke. It's more of like the atmosphere of the piece.
So why would you risk any possibility of a record company or an orchestra coming back and saying like, that 3 seconds of music you use, like, we'll just make it ourselves, but with our own little flair.
Yeah. So that was the summer, the end of the summer,
Hmm.
as summer begins. And then our next one is Power in China.
Which, understanding the mystery of power in China.
Yeah, which is literally about the electricity bill, is the story there. And that's a pretty solid season 2 piece. We've got vlogs, we've got interstitials, we've got, a whole video collage of ideas. What was significant about this piece is I did go out with some friends to a temple out in the countryside, and it was a beautiful, nice day, and I wanted to film some of it. And previously, when we'd done filming of like vacation stuff or travel stuff, it is very like home movie, put it together, put it to some music kind of stuff. And this one, I really tried to get people talking on film. So maybe there's not a specific narrative to the piece, but that you do get to hear. I don't want to do a voiceover later of like, this is 𝗣𝗨 Temple, and this is the entryway, and here's the monks, and we ate this, and blah, blah, blah. And so instead I wanted to capture kind of in the moment what we were seeing, and kind of give you that maybe explanation of what's happening, but it was more about being in the moment of experiencing touring this temple.
Which was definitely, in editing it together, was fun for me because it really was the closest thing maybe that we've done to like doing a straight up like documentary kind of like feel, but finding the story within it. Like you had already put together pieces out there in the field that were the narrative of a story. So and it's only a minute long or something like that, but I as one of our outdoor pieces, I feel like it's maybe one of our strongest. I mean, I think it's pretty darn funny too, but it's also really beautiful and it looks great, sounds great, and it's all on your dinky little phone.
Yeah, and I think if I'm remembering correctly, so you and I shot that footage with the idea in mind that I was going to try to get diegetic conversation on film, and so I would ask my companions questions so that I could catch them talking on film. And then you and I sat down together and mapped out a couple of interesting beats, like or moments of not really a story, but of an experience.
What were the most important moments?
Yeah. And then you kind of ran with that and shaped this. So I think you had a lot of control over the end product, but we did talk about it together. Whereas in the past, you kind of, and not as a dig, but like I wasn't interested in that, and so you just kind of shaped whatever narrative out of footage you wanted to, and then afterwards I would write a voiceover to it.
I would say that,
that was successful too, but it is kind of more interesting, I think.
I would say like in terms of traditional like reality TV, that's maybe the closest thing we've worked to that would be like a TV crew of you were kind of the journalist out in the field, and I'm the editor, storyteller that pieces it all together. Like I think that has a very TV aspect of like the person in the field is rarely, your Michael Moore who comes back and then like writes it all together and edits it all back together. But you actually were out there. I'm going to a place. I'm going to talk about this place with other people. I'm going to interview people. Then you brought the bulk of it back, and we discussed what can we actually do with that as a presentation to edit.
I think it was more collaborative than we had been in the past, which, I mean, we're good collaborators, but it was more like working alongside each other, and now this was actually like, there was an integration period where you and I together made some decisions, and then we did our things separately.
Right. Yeah, our usual collaborative is sort of come together at the beginning of an idea, talk about roughly what we're thinking, and then you go out and gather stuff together, and then we like bring it back together. So it's sort of like handing off of like, I got this information for you. Okay, here's what I'll do with that information, and then I show it back to you, and this is what I did with it. And you think, well, what can I do with it? This was like definitely more like, how do we tell this story together?
Yeah.
Rather than just like handing it off from department to department.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like that was the standout segment of that.
Definitely.
Video. The rest of the video is good. It just is like we were good at what we were doing, and we did more of it.
Yeah, I would say like this is that period where we were really looking into expanding what we're kind of starting to refer to as like Sesame Street for an adult mindset of like, we've got little segments. There's maybe roughly a theme. Mm-hmm. Maybe this episode was brought to you by the letter Q, but that doesn't mean like we're not going to go down to Mr. Hooper's for a little while and see what that's about and then come back. So we're experimenting with, which makes it a total pain in the butt for doing SEO, but I think from an artistic standpoint, we were really figuring out like these are on episode beats that were really satisfying to put together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the next video I want to talk about is 1 year in Lijiang, which we just put out yesterday.
Last night.
It's
not even 24 hours.
And this one actually is a return to. Actually, I didn't do anything for this video. Mm-hmm. I filmed it originally, and I appear in it, but Peter was the one who put all this footage together and put the music to it.
So it was from 2015. So it's quite old.
The original footage was from 2015, and we have been kicking. So we moved to Lijiang, which is a small city town, really.
One province over.
And
very small city,
and it was a beautiful place to live, but we didn't really like it there, so we moved back to where we are now, Luzhou. And for years we've kind of been talking about like what kind of story do we want to tell about it. And while we were there, we just like kind of stopped blogging. We were blogging on 𝗖𝗵cie_foreigner.com before we were vlogging on YouTube. And we just had stopped blogging.
We lost our way. We were busy with things.
Yeah, we just
perpetually sick.
I think what we decided is we don't really have a story to tell about. Like, we moved there and we moved back. It was what it was. And so Peter finally, we even last year, like the whole year, we're like, well, what do we do with this footage? Maybe we can approach it like this. At one point, it was going to be a series of 5 podcast discussions about different aspects of living there.
Because we have about a couple hours of good footage.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful place. You can see in the video. It's just like, there's this huge mountain range, that the Himalayas, that starts right there overlooking the town, and the air is just so crisp and
overlooking
beautiful.
Our apartment. Like it's just an awe-inspiring place to be. But to live there, it's sort of, it's a tourist town.
Yeah, it is. It's more popular with Chinese tourists than foreign tourists, but foreign tourists are starting to figure it out. Mm-hmm. But it is like, you go there because you're going to go up the mountain, or you go there because they have this fake old town that is pretty impressive, even though it's fake. But that's China. But
it's the best old town that we've been to.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place to live, but our actual experience of living there wasn't. It was fine. You
just kind of get used to it. You become like the carnival rat that works in the place.
Right,
like, when you know the back streets, and you're zip-zapping to get away from the crowds to get from point A to point B, because you got to work here and you got to eat lunch over there, and you know the back road around the back of the mountain, and you know which days to go up the mountain or down the mountain, or so you learn all these like little like running around behind the scenes things that, I don't know, like, I mean, if you worked at Disneyland or something like that, you probably might recognize that and maybe enjoy that, but like for us it was kind of like, felt like sort of skirting in the shadows of around tourists.
Yeah, and so, we lived there for actually 10 months, and then we decided not to live there anymore. And so we didn't really, that's not a story actually.
Yeah, we lived in a place that was beautiful.
Right. We lived in a place and then we didn't want to live there. And so
basically what we got is 10 minutes of a really beautiful postcard.
Yeah, this is our example of like we tried to start work on this project several times in the 4 years since it happened, and even during. And it just like it didn't come. There's definitely aspects of living there and characters we met that are probably going to be showing up in writing that I do. But
and we have every intention to go back there as tourists.
Yeah, as far as like, do we want to do a project about living in Lijiang for that year? The answer turned out to be no. So Peter did, but like we're saying, the footage is gorgeous, and we do have, similarly to the temple, we have some good like dialogue that happened in video that we captured, and so Peter just put together this 10-minute video collage of a place that is really beautiful and rains a lot.
Yeah, in that sense, it is kind of like Florida in that part of the day the sun comes out and it's beautiful and warm, and another part it rains. So it's always you're running in and outdoors of like, it's beautiful, get inside, it's beautiful, get inside.
Which was hard for doing laundry because we don't have dryers. We haven't had a dryer anywhere we live. You always hang your clothes outside, so it is like you need a day that it doesn't rain at all or your clothes don't dry.
Clothes are always wet.
Yeah. But so we turned that into
and it makes for a nice with all that material. I mean, part of going back to it was like when you have a situation, a story, a part of your life that is like a lot of it was great, but a lot of it just was not really having much fun at all. Like I don't really want to. Maybe that's putting out your Facebook life of like, well, what was the pain? What was the awful things that happened to you? Like, I don't really want to go back there. I don't really care.
And it wasn't like awful. It wasn't awful in any kind of interesting way.
Yeah, like no one fell off a mountain or was taken away by an eagle to a...
It was just like, okay, this is a normal life.
Yeah, it's just irritating. I'm not having fun.
Yeah. But
so to finally put together that material and look at it now is like, that was pretty cool. I'm glad we did that.
Yeah, it was
nice
definitely...
job. Let's move on.
In retrospect, it's like, at the time, sometimes it felt like we had made a mistake of moving from a place we really liked to a place we didn't like. But in retrospect, it is a valuable, interesting experience that we had.
And now it's all on film for you to watch.
Yeah. And we can close the book on it. We don't have to keep every couple of months. So what are we going to do about the Lijiang footage? No, it's done.
Until we go back and visit as a tourist and we can make a tourist video.
Yeah. And then the other new video we put out this week was the environment.
Why care about the environment?
Yeah. And so this, I kind of took that in a broader sense of like, yes, the ecosystem and the pollution that we're currently pumping out into the environment, but also like just being where you are and the atmosphere around you. And so that was kind of the loose thread that connected all these segments.
Most of them.
Yeah. And so this is part 2 of 3 videos that we kind of put together. Starting 2 weeks ago, we started amassing footage, and then we're kind of mixing this together with kind of some scraggles from the fall that were leftover segments and interviews that
and some new
we're
footage.
Very proud of, and we're ready to finish that project and then continue.
One thing that we found out by discovering the giraffe is it's a good way to push things together because the giraffe can narrate what's going on.
It's a recognizable presence throughout.
So for our Sesame Street idea of having stories kind of from all over the place, from 2 years ago, from 8 years ago, from 2 weeks ago, from 2 minutes ago, we can assemble everything in the studio thanks to the giraffe, and we can take all these different parts, and that's what these 3 videos are doing. The giraffe is basically sweeping up the past couple of years into a nice little pile, and then we can move forward with it.
Yeah. And I think we said this last week too, but not that the videos going forward are going to be significantly different, but it is like some of these, like the bug and the Chinese characters or the rain boots segments are stuff I filmed in like October, which, you know, we just want to finish that series, and then we can have a new series of things that we are going to start rolling out in a couple weeks. So it's not that we're going to make any kind of major change, but it just is like we're taking a look around and seeing like what did we not forget, but what haven't we gotten the chance to put out yet? Let's make sure that also gets.
Yeah, not like that. It's any of its junk that's left over, but more so that let's finish these ideas.
Yeah,
and that will make it a lot easier. I mean, there already is stuff that we've already filmed that are for the videos coming after that.
Yeah,
but then it's predominantly brand new presentations of things. I mean, we still have old stuff that is laying around that are like funny little bits and pieces for interstitials and stuff. But for the most part, like this is us finishing a year's worth of work.
Yeah.
And 3 or 4 years worth of work. And 8 years worth of work.
And then continuing on in that style, but with getting the chance to add more fresh ideas to it. So I want to talk about a couple of segments. So like we're saying, we have these interviews with some of our Chinese friends that were done over the fall. And so these are our chance to find like the last best tidbits that we have and include them. And it was nice to get to talk to our friends. Our friends, I guess, somewhat introverted, so I always feel like when I ask people, do you want to be interviewed for camera, like my expectations will be like, no, and they're always
who would agree to this?
Yeah, they're always like, of course, I'm so excited. What's your channel?
As a quick aside, did you ever feel working professionally as a journalist and having to call famous people through their publicists, like, I hope I'm not bothering Mike Patton or...
No, actually, I took it as a given that they'd want to be in the paper, or even like if I was trying to get quotes from regular people. I don't know why. I do know why, and it's my own insecurities in that I was representing the newspaper, so I was like, everybody wants to be in the newspaper. Even I do know like stars complain a lot, musicians and artists and actors complain a lot about like inane, insipid interviews that they have to sit through, but. I never felt like I was impinging on anyone, and I also felt like I tried my best to do a good interview. Whereas for our project, I am like, oh, I'm bothering someone for something that is for me.
You're asking for a favor that they're not actually going to get.
Right, I'm asking for a favor rather than like doing a job.
Well, then they're actually getting something out of it by getting promotional work for whatever project that they're on. Like they're ready to talk
there's
about
a transaction there, whereas like our friend Jessie's just a med school student. She's not.
Yeah,
she's not selling any albums that you now know about.
I was just going to lunch with my friend, and then all of a sudden, she wants me to talk about my childhood.
Right, but people do love to talk about themselves.
Well, in this day and age,
turns out,
yeah, everyone. I mean, if you don't have a therapist, you have a YouTube channel. So.
Yeah.
Or maybe both.
Yeah. So these interviews, and you know, we're hoping to continue that.
Yeah.
Even though I still feel like I'm imposing on people.
Going back to what you were saying before of us, we're getting out now. We're a lot of what we're doing is finishing all the stuff that we've had before. And now we've got all of our process together in the studio, and now the weather's nice, and let's get out there and let's talk to people. Let's get around Luzhou. Let's hopefully show you, the viewer, more about what our city's about and who are the people that live there. So that's one of our primary goals going forward is how do we really get ourselves out there and out of the studio.
Yeah. Yeah, and then so that's that. And then, so another piece from Environment is the vlog piece. We have a return of the talking head to the camera. a street address is not enough. And as you can hear, I mentioned that, it's 2018, because I did film it in 2018, but at a point where I think it was just before we moved the channel, so there had not, after that, been, I recorded it, we moved the channel, and then we weren't vlogging anymore. So this piece just never got placed anywhere because there hadn't been an opportunity. And I do feel like this is a good example of environment as the world around you. So I liked how it fit in with the rest of what we were doing, and it feels, I think it opens it up of like, especially the giraffe being such a nervous energy, to have a story then that's outside and far more relaxed, and alongside these kind of weirder esoteric thoughts, a straightforward, I'm always getting lost, and the street address does not ever help.
Yeah, and you've lived here for umpteen years, and you have a pretty good understanding of the language, and yet still you're wandering around a decent amount of time going like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah.
And so as I'm trying to hone into these weirder, more existential thoughts as the giraffe, it is also, we have other tools in our toolbox, and we can tell these stories alongside each other, and they kind of go well together, I think.
That's the beauty of existential thoughts, that they kind of go with everything.
Yeah. It's good to mix. And then also, care for your garments. So part of on the ecological side of things, I recently read an article, and this article comes out every so often, about how fast fashion is terrible for the planet. That textile manufacture, historically, women's lives, like way back before looms were invented, women's lives were spent mostly making textiles, is a historical fact. But now that we have machinery to do that, the cost of that labor and the impact it has on the planet is like, we're not aware of it. And so specifically buying new clothes every 6 months and throwing out old clothes that you haven't worn for that long is just terrible for the planet. And so I've been thinking a lot about that, and that thought pops up in various segments, but this one, care for your garments, is because I did just do this to a bunch of my t-shirts. So I don't know, ladies, is this a problem for you? Like, I wear deodorant, and then the deodorant soaks into the shirt, and it's not a sweat stain, it's the actual deodorant has like soaked in and discolored the armpit of your shirt, and it's super gross. I mean, it's not super gross, it's just like, it doesn't look neat. And it didn't occur to me, like, you can get this out. It's not stained, it's just soaked in, and you can unsoak it. And so I looked up online how to do this, and then I did it. And it was like, oh, now these t-shirts don't feel like garbage t-shirts anymore. They look, pretty good. They're not as perfect as new, but they don't look like I'm embarrassed to wear them in public anymore or have to cut off the sleeve. And so that was like the practical thinking behind that. But then as a segment, care for your garments, it's kind of this manic, fast-paced, like, internet tip. Here's a commercial for how to do a thing. Oh, also, so there's that this tip actually works is part of it. And then I have gone through a series of researching things on the internet that didn't like actually work in real life. One of them being the vacuum saga that we talked about a couple weeks ago. If you vacuum up, whatever my baking soda is here that I'm buying is too small grained for my vacuum to hold, so it just explodes it out into the room. So don't put baking soda on your mattress and vacuum it. But that was a tip I had learned online. And also, a few months ago there was a meme about like you're using your can opener wrong. Like usually this is the can and you have the can opener going this way, and it was like, no, it's meant to go this way. So I tried it and it just like totally destroyed the can lid. So like I feel like there's a lot of information on the internet that is very, like, oh, here's the counterfactual to something we've all accepted as received wisdom. What a meme! And no, it's not true. Actually,
5 hacks to mess your crap up.
Yeah. Common wisdom is usually correct because that's, that was what worked. So anyway, that I found information online that was like a true hack that actually worked. I wanted that excited me. But then the actual format of telling this in it came to me, and this is something I'm like trying to be open to, because I know how to sit down and write a script, write a narrative, right? It's, you start here, you end here. But I've been also trying to accept ideas and be open to ideas and save those ideas of that just come to me with that are more imagery than words, if that makes any sense. And that it usually happens when I just wake up, or if I'm like walking somewhere, I'll start like having these ideas that I feel like if I let them go and don't write them down, that they'll be gone, and that's fine. But instead of letting them go, I'm writing them down and then pursuing them, which I guess is like how art works. But it's more that these thoughts come to me unbidden rather than like writing. I can't explain what the difference is, but like that there's a logical reason why I'm interested in writing about this thing. Because like the dance segments came to me that way too, of like I just woke up thinking about like if I'm dancing in the rain and telling kind of melancholy stories. And I could have not done that, and then they wouldn't have existed.
Would you say that some of that is a more natural process than actually coming up with a story that you have to go research?
More natural, and I mean that it feels intuitive rather than logical. Right.
It's something that's actually coming straight from you rather than like I have to go check this out. Does this work this way? How the process of putting it together is something that I'm going to have to study and work on, as opposed to like if I've decided I want to paint a barn, then I have the choice of I'm either going to pack up all my gear and go out to the field and find a barn that's suitable for what I like, as opposed to like, I'm just going to paint a barn, I don't care what it looks like. And maybe it's a cube.
You mean make a painting of a barn?
Yeah. Not make an actual barn.
Actual painting the barn. Yes, I think it is
more of an interpretation than it is a practical like how to barn. How barn makes me feel. It is definitely,
and like we were saying the other day, I feel comfortable pushing into these experiments of like, I don't know, I didn't at any point know how it was going to turn out, and I don't know, like I like how it turned out, but I'm not even sure that it matches what my original thought was. But that I feel comfortable doing these more experimental pieces because we do have such a framework, and I am very certain in like what a giraffe thought should be.
Mm-hmm.
And so that then like if I have these, I guess it's imagery, and I'm not a very visual person, that like holding on to these images and trying to recreate them in the real world feels very different for me than like writing down an idea and then saying it.
Well,
do you know what I mean?
Certainly with that piece in particular, with the garments, is something that you had a vision for.
Mm-hmm.
You just didn't know visually how to represent it. So you were, in a sense, as the technician of how do we actually capture that information, you were directing me of like, no, I need it a little bit more like this. No, I need it more like this. I need this angle. When I did the first cut of it, it was like 2 minutes long, and you're like, whoa, that is way too long. This is like a 30-second piece.
Yeah.
So like you were giving me the direction of what it was, even if you couldn't actually like sit down and sketch for me, like, I need the camera here, I need this kind of light, let's do it at this time of day. You gave me all the factors of this is the information I need to get through, and then you're using my skill of like, oh, then if you need that, then you put a camera here. All right, that looks good. All right, then we need a light here, and let's do a segment during the day and a segment during the night. So you're directing those ideas that I'm like just trying to facilitate in a technical standpoint to get it across.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's maybe one of the first times, or not, we've done on smaller scale, I mean, this is 30-second piece, but we've done a little bit of like, I have an idea, I don't know how to make it look like what I think it should look like. Mm-hmm. How do we make it look like this? And then you come up with that aspect of things.
Right.
But
our
it
bug
does
segment is a good example of like one maybe our first run through of trying to do that.
Yeah, the bug was very much, and the bug was another idea that I just woke up and was like, this is an idea. Mm-hmm. So I guess it must be tapping into my subconscious more than my logical conscious brain driving the train. And it's exciting, and it is like, I don't know if it's good, but I like it. It was fun to make. And like you said, like, is this a parody of how-tos? Is this itself a stylized how-to? And the answer is, I don't know, and I'm kind of okay with that. And so it is, and again, like, having such a foundation of structure and knowing that, like, I can plug in these weirder ideas to something that already works and is already established. Really, I have this feeling of freedom to do stuff that where I'm not sure exactly what will end.
Right. Well, what you gave me was something that was my interest in it. Is it's not necessarily satire, because you actually are giving a real tip of this works. You
yeah, the joy of that it worked is part of my inspiration for it.
But by giving it to me, I was able to look at it as like, yeah, we all click on YouTube for how do I get a certain thing done, and I got to sit through 15 minutes of whatever it is. Of now I'm gonna here's a story of why I used to buy T-shirts and now I have 10 T-shirts, and some of them are like, would you just show me the vinegar and the baking soda put together? Right. And so the more that you were like, cut it down, I'm like, this is actually a great commentary of like, if all YouTube clips of how to do something was 30 seconds of like, get a stain out, bam, over.
And I don't know that was ever consciously part of what I thought I was doing.
But that's how I interpret it.
Yeah,
so there's different levels that what's coming out of you is an idea that is now.
Because I can show you, this one I walked to school and like I was thinking about it, and then I scribbled this down on a piece of paper. Can you see that?
Hold up a little bit. Yeah. Nope, down. There you go.
So it was just these 5 panels of like, I want to see a T-shirt. I want to see baking soda and vinegar. I want to see, and then I want to see the clean T-shirt, and it was. Like,
cut to a man with a cigar walking across the street at 12.
Like, I think some of the direction I gave you when I was like, it needs to be way shorter, is that it's a how-to for maniacs.
Yeah.
And that it should be super deranged and overwhelming. And I think, I don't know, it's a weird piece, and I'm really excited to make stuff like that. Because it is also, in terms of like, what is YouTube for? I don't feel like what we have to be producing is TV-ready work. Even though I won't hide it. If we got a television show, I would love that. Mm-hmm. But for YouTube, it is about these weird experiments.
Yeah, it's a workshop.
Workshop is the perfect
the best
word.
place for it. It's a place to hone your ideas to hopefully move. I mean, that's what we're using it for. Hopefully we can move these ideas into a bigger format so more people can see them. But in the meantime, we're going to play.
Because not everybody reacts to that work in that way. Some people are expecting this to be like a fully realized piece of work, and so then they're like, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
we're trying something.
Why would you use that kind of vinegar?
Yeah. But I can't control the audience reaction, so I don't. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is our dramatic scene, a visit to the doctor, or pharmacy something or other. It's true life. I wanted to talk about what it's like to go to the doctor, but in kind of a sitcom way rather than a actual. We do have a how to go to a Chinese clinic video that is much more like, I went to a Chinese clinic. Here's what the inside of a Chinese clinic looks like. Here's what the doctor usually does, and here's the medicine she gives me. Where and in China, you can go to your neighborhood clinic for a cold or something minor, and they'll give you it's prescription or non-prescription drugs. And then you just go to there's not doctors' offices. You just go to the hospital. That's where all the doctors work. So even just a minor, but more than the clinic can handle, you go to the hospital and go see a doctor there. That's just the way it works. And so we kind of, we talked about this a little bit last week with the breakfast food. This was part of a series in February that I was writing that Peter and I were going to dramatize aspects of Chinese life with an eye towards giving it real story structure and trying to have some sort of stake involved.
Without actually just us vlogging the story of here's how you go to the pharmacy.
Yeah.
We thought let's work on our chops of, neither of us are trying to be actors, but we don't have actors, so we'll play the parts, but let's try to write and direct pieces that can actually tell this information in a creative way that we can bolster our muscles of writing interesting pieces.
Yeah.
But maybe be a little bit functional in the way of a China vlog.
Yeah, and as I said last week, they kind of came out a little bit learning English TV.
Yeah.
And I think, and I'm proud of this work, and that this is an experiment that taught us a lot in how it didn't work. And part of what didn't work about it is we are replacing the vlog where I'm talking directly to camera with now I'm talking to Peter, but it's still a tell don't show situation. It's we're not at the hospital. We don't see me do these things. It still is only an info dump.
Mm-hmm. Like exposition in
a
soap opera.
Yeah,
I went to a place.
Introducing a character of but you've been in a coma for 10 years. This is your grown-up daughter who we've never met before, and just giving you all this information in a clunky way that
is only slightly more exciting than just telling you.
and we knew this going in, and so part of what we tried to do, especially with this one, was jazz up the language of the piece. And because vlog happens this way, I'm telling you, not showing you, and stand-up comedy happens this way, but so the joy and the funniness of stand-up comedy lives in the language they use to tell you these stories. Because storytelling itself is not dead. But we were trying to use our resources for storytelling and take advantage of the fact that we're using a visual medium to tell these stories. But stand-up is not usually you just go see stand-up at a club, and so that's the presentation on TV, and they always, or they, not always, but there have been attempts to especially I feel in the late 90s or early 2000s of introducing these little dramatic scenes in between stand-up bits. Margaret Cho has a special where they do that, and
right.
It doesn't quite work. So it is if I'm directly addressing you as the audience, it's more acceptable to have this telling a story. But if I'm addressing Peter, it doesn't quite work to still just be telling a story, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a kind of a stage device too. Tom Waits' movie Big Time was like that, of there'd be little stand-up set pieces in between, and I guess Prince did it too. So music and stand-up comedy have a lot in common.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a really tough thing to put together. Any time that you're on stage and you are whatever, put on some kind of, whether you've got a red jacket like Eddie Murphy or like you know a crazy hairdo like Robert Smith or something. There's always like, that guy should be a movie star. That guy should be a guitarist. That should be in and you know doing stand up or whatever.
Yeah.
They're kind of funny.
But
So
that
they're kind of
live
interrelated.
performance has a different job to do than a filmic.
Yeah, so it never really quite jives the way that.
Yeah, but so this one we did try. I wrote an outline of the arc of the story, and if you can notice that there, like, I tried to actually structure this anecdote. And then Peter and I went together through it to like punch up different aspects of what language I was going to use. And this one was pretty improvised, whereas last week's breakfast cereal one was like line. It was all written. This one was pretty heavily structured but improvised, and like hit these specific notes and use these, like the imagery of a fleshy game of checkers, which I like, it's funny, but I don't know if it totally works. It's weird. And so, by criticizing it, I don't mean to put it down at all. It's just like, this is a thing that we learned a ton by doing. And a part of what we learned is what didn't work, which is always valuable. And what I do like about it is I like starting to have you be in the film. And the actual filming itself, like we sat in our empty pool, which is kind of a striking place to be. We had 2 cameras set up.
Yep.
And you can digitally zoom after the fact. And so we did have like a dynamic cutting to the story, and particularly the end where I take out the tambourine lollipop and the lollipops fall out. You composited it out of a couple different shots to make that one shot together. So it was like a very, very much about structure and editing.
Yeah, well, when you watch any kind of show, particularly, I think it's easier to get away with things in movies because you have more time, possibly. But and watch just about any show that's not like a live show, and every time they cut a scene, like fixate on somebody who's not the primary speaking part, and you can see people are like in completely different places. The continuity is all over the place.
Well, it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be,
but
it really is. Like,
yeah.
I mean, people, not just like, did somebody like leave a glass like in a certain place, and then
yeah.
and then another place, next shot, it's like literally like somebody was like standing like this, and then they cut to one instant from another camera. That person should still be like this, but they're like,
yeah, or they're holding a mug in one shot and they're not holding it in the other shot. And
yeah,
in defense, it's really hard. I worked continuity on one movie, and it's really, really hard because continuity is so important to the continuity person, but it's not the most important thing to other people. So even there will
once
be
you notice,
cases.
I hate to I'm ruining it, but like once you notice it, like no matter how professional it is, every show you watch, unless it's like a whole stage, hour-long drama or something like that, any sitcom is just like, oh my god, this is all over the place.
Yeah, and so there's that, and then there's also like the idea of cutting. That there's not a one-to-one correspondence with what's on film and what's on life. I mean for example, the initial approach of me entering the scene and walking towards Peter, we show me walking, and then you can cut from I'm here in this angle, and then I've actually like come much closer to sitting down in the second angle, and that's, I think, not a continuity error. That's more editing of like I can accept that as a viewer because I don't need to watch this full walk happen. So you can have implied action in your cuts, and so that's, I think, the interesting thing about cutting action is that it's not
it's another one of those like editing things of like, if you do your job well, people are not going to notice it. And
Yeah,
it doesn't
yeah.
actually have to be perfect because you're working with a situation that's not perfect. You've got like 5 different cameras.
Well, and in fact,
how
like,
many other
if
takes.
you did have it perfect, it wouldn't flow right.
Yep.
So
That's
and
also a problem.
like, because we've talked about before that, we've edited some things and like argued over seconds or milliseconds of how action should happen between cuts.
That's how it really happened.
Right, but it
look
doesn't
right.
look right, and so it is about like having it look right. And so that lollipop thing, I think looks great, and that that's actually several different cuts stitched together to make that action look right.
Yeah.
To get the action that we want.
And now that we pointed out, you can go there and probably see what the problem is too.
I'm not saying it's a problem. I'm saying that it works.
Well, right. I mean, you wouldn't notice it, but like you can kind of see of like, oh, I know why they cut to that shot now is because the other shot was probably duffed out and not able to be used. So you found another shot. Oh, like
no,
so
I'm saying that
that's the. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying that's the artistry of doing these fairly mundane stuff. Like it's easy for me to like stage a shot where whatever the smoke is going to come at the right time and the lighting is perfect. Like to stage a shot is a whole different world than like let me just film a person walking into a room. Filming the person walking into a room is really hard in a completely different way, and if you do it like no one would say like watch this part of the movie.
right.
I had a person walk into a room there and I filmed it. Like,
yeah.
no one
Watch them come in the door and then sit on the couch.
and it's
brilliant.
Yeah, if I filmed it wrong, then you would notice it and it would look terrible. But
Right. Yeah.
Since you're able to stitch it together, that's an interesting.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of work too.
It is a lot of work, and that's like you'll have cases. We don't do this because we're using real locations, but you can have cases where like this side of the room is one set and this side of the room is a completely different set. But through the magic of editing, you can make it look like they're opposite each other.
Right.
And I think that's.
Or you can't follow a character from one room to the next because the other room is like in a different building.
Right, the other room is in Mexico
Yeah.
or something. But yeah, I think, and I am in awe of that, not having such a good visual sense. So I that's all I'm saying.
I'm in awe of it from a camera standpoint because my knowledge of that comes from a comic book, whereas I'll just draw another box and another panel. This panel's in Baltimore, this one's in Mexico. I don't have to worry about them getting from the next one because a little bubble will come up and says, meanwhile.
Right.
But actually getting that to flow on screen is like, that's a whole new world.
And
for
it can be a matter of milliseconds.
Yeah.
Which is just, it's fun to figure out.
Yeah.
Before we move on, I just want to mention the Western Toilet music video that goes with this video.
Oh, yeah.
Called 𝗖𝗵cie_ះ𝗴𝗾. And this is footage that we used in the actual vlog itself. We have a complaint about neti pots, and then so Peter's idea was that I would use the neti pot and struggle with it and choke on it. And then we went outside because it was a nice day, and our episode was about the environment, so we could show a nice environment. And so we just filmed this, and I acted my best.
You really neti potted.
Yeah, it's not that hard to choke on an neti pot.
Good acting.
Yeah, but so then Peter just slowed down that footage, and water in slow-mo is always going to be a winner.
Yeah. Yeah, just a video for our music.
Yeah.
Of neti pot in slow motion.
Anything to say about the music?
I like it.
Yeah.
It's pretty vaporwavy.
I did notice this one was really
Wavy.
vaporwave. Slow and chill.
Before we move on to the next one, is that everything for that?
Yeah.
I just want to point out while we're sitting here, we just got 115 subscribers. Ding, ding, ding.
Whoa. It never stops.
Yeah.
What if we're famous? Let's bring it home with Watch It.
Watch it.
Our Watch It this week is Barry, which is an HBO show.
I think so.
Yeah. It's Bill Hader from Saturday Night Live and other stuff. Plays
Another song.
a hitman who does a hit out in LA and then gets sucked into this acting class and really starts to question whether killing people is his life's work or if he wants to be an actor. Which, to be honest, as a setup, was not really that intriguing to either of us. But I kept hearing people on various blogs and podcasts say how funny it was, so we tried it ourselves, and it is, in fact, incredibly funny.
Before we go any further, is this spoiler-free?
Oh, yeah, so we are going to discuss some mechanics and plot points from only the first season. We have not caught up. We haven't...
watched the whole first season.
Yeah, we haven't finished the first season, so we're going to only discuss up to that point. I would say... there's plot that might be fun to experience fresh, so if you're worried about spoilers and you do want to watch the show, it's very funny, give it a try, and then come back to our discussion after you've caught up to episode 7 of the first season. So we'll see you back here. If you don't care about spoilers or you've already watched it, we're going to dig in.
Don't spoil it for us.
Yeah, don't spoil it for us. But it's a very... First of all, I am a sucker for behind-the-scenes Hollywood shows.
30 Rock.
30 Rock, State and Maine as a movie.
Slings and Arrows.
All About Eve, Slings and Arrows. Or The Three Faces of Eve. Whatever, that old movie. But stuff that's about Hollywood or making TV or making acting happen. I love those stories. And it is like, part of it is a little bit... like, maybe it's not good for me in that, like, it's hilarious to see people who think they're good at one thing and then, like, the joke is that they're not good at it, but then, like, my very real insecurity is that I think I'm good at a thing and that I would not turn out to be good at it. But to make good art, you have to be fully committed, so it is hard to watch making fun of actors in an acting class who are terrible at what they do, but it is also hilarious.
It is the joy these days of watching, as the kids say, cringe-worthy.
Yeah. But then you also have to make space to like, wholeheartedly throw yourself into something. But, so, that's one aspect of the show. What I really like about the arc of the show is, so it opens... The first episode opens with, like, Barry in the aftermath of a hit. We see the dead body, and then we see him, like, cleaning his gun and then going off into his life. But we don't... I think the moral crux of the show is that he has justified this work to himself in that he's only killing bad guys. Like, he is taking money... He's
ex-Marine, right?
Yeah, he's an ex-Marine.
He's been sanctioned to do this job.
Yeah,
it's okay.
He's taking money to kill people, but he knows that the people he's killing are doing bad stuff. And this is starting to wear away that, like, he gets this guy who is just a doofus. And he's like, this isn't a bad guy. I don't feel it right killing him. And he does not, in fact, kill him. He gets killed by somebody else. But the show takes great pains to show him in these challenging moral situations where he kind of takes inaction as his default. And then he shoots the Chechens as self-defense, so that's justified. But then in episode 7, to set up the finale events, he ends up killing a guy who's just a security risk, who was his friend at one point. And I think that's an interesting point to, like, have him talking about all these moral misdeeds, but not actually show him doing any of them until this second to last episode of the season, which structurally is very interesting.
As you're saying it, it's starting to dawn on me, like, it's kind of... I mean, I never watched Born Identity past, like, the first movie, but it is, like, this kind of... He's not genetically enhanced, but he's not Captain America, but he is, like, a super soldier, and, like, he really can't mess up. He's always the dead shot. He always knows exactly what to do in the situation. But in that sense, while he's so perfectly competent in that situation, he's also kind of a blank slate that is wandering into the morality of what that is, and it's a really slow process that it isn't just like thrown out on a plate of like, here's what the story's about. It's sort of like, am I just watching a cold-blooded killer that thinks that the law's on their side, and then they bend it to be after the military they can continue to do this, and then they start to realize where that's going.
Right, and because over at the same time, he's in this acting class and he's not good at acting, and the teacher, played by Henry Winkler, he's so good, he's so funny. He's keep telling Barry to like access your emotions, show us something other than a blank slate, and he can't until he kills his friend, and then that actually opens up like he's able to act. So I think, you know, structurally we see him. It's interesting because the story circle is, you start from a place of normalcy, and then you go into a world of chaos, and then you come back by the end to your place of normalcy. And this kind of inverts that. In his place of normalcy is murder. And then he goes into a place where the chaos is not murdering, it's acting. And then to bring it back to the normalcy, he then commits murder again after we don't, like, it's a show about a hitman, and he doesn't actually kill anybody for most of the show. Which I just think it's like, it's so wonderfully symmetrical without being formulaic or
right. It definitely sets up a scenario that, like, well, given that premise, and that's, I have no interest in watching a show about a story about a hitman. So that's our reluctance in watching it. But then that gives me the excitement throughout watching of it. It takes turns where I'm not expecting. I'm just like, all right, so he's just going to kill that. Oh, he didn't kill that guy. Oh, that's interesting. All right, so now he's just going to go kill all these guys. I mean, he didn't do that. But so everything is a little left turn that's actually taking a character in an interesting place that I'm not guessing what's going to happen. So it's exciting.
Yeah, and they set up very well. They set up this world where, like, he has this code. He murders for money, but he's compartmentalized it and everything's cool. And then they proceed to show you how everything is not cool and how he's like starting to break down in what he does. Because there is another murder that comes that is motivated. He actually takes the motivation to complete the job because he wants to go hang out with this girl. So it's like a total breakdown of, like, he had this rigid code and he wants to do things right and he has these skills, and then, like, opening up to have a real life, to be in the acting class and to have friends and relationships
gets in the way of his work.
Yeah, starts to mean he's not this cold-blooded killer. And, like, as with all anti-hero shows, you're kind of rooting for someone to do something very, very bad. So it's just it's a lot more complex and interesting than I think.
And then like our villains, I don't know who that actor is, or the two actors that play the Chechens are comical villains, but they, what seems like one note quickly turns into, like, really wonderfully weird performances.
They're so great.
Yeah.
There's NoHo Hank is the second in command, and he has alopecia, but no one remarks on that.
I didn't actually realize that's what that is.
Yeah, he doesn't have eyebrows or hair or anything. And he plays this character that is, like, on the surface feels like two wild and crazy guys. But the actor brings such groundedness to it and guilelessness that, like, he really is super sympathetic while also being, like, a criminal.
Yeah, cold-hearted enough where the job gets done, but then he also might, like, worry about, like, I don't know, the decor of your living room.
Or, like, he sees the camaraderie between Barry and his handler, and he's like, oh, he cares about Fuchs. That's so nice.
Yeah.
He's a delightful character.
Yeah.
And then Fuchs is the boss of Barry, who's played by Stephen Root, who is just, he's a joy
And everything.
in everything. So that's, I recommend Barry.
Yeah, it's definitely, didn't think we were going there, and delighted that we did.
Yeah. But let's wrap this baby up with noodles to you.